Hey folks, this is Curtis Brown, your instructor for HSEP 302. Just want to go over the week 2 discussion with you and discuss week 3 reading and discussion question. Also talk about the quiz. So for week 2, your discussion board question was related to understanding risks and hazards. And I asked you to look at a place that you visited or where you live from a risk perspective, from a risk and hazard perspective, and to consider what an emergency manager would consider a risk or hazard based on that location. Some of you all, I also asked you to prioritize all of them and to consider all of them. A lot of you all put just one or two. So I really want you to think comprehensively. Most of the places all across the globe, there's usually a whole host of risks and hazards. And a part of the role for the emergency manager to do is to prioritize those. So many of y'all did that, but some could probably do a little bit more depth. So I would again encourage you to really do the reading. Many of y'all pointed to flooding and hurricanes because the places you mentioned were in coastal communities. As it relates to flooding, and this is important to note, flooding is the most likely and consistent and devastating disaster in America. Flooding can occur anywhere. Even across the globe, we've seen higher instances of flooding just because of more impactful and steady rain events. So that is something important to mention. But many of y'all mentioned hurricanes, flooding. Some of you all mentioned terrorism because some of the places that you've gone to have experienced terrorism. And one post was from Paris, France, related to past terrorism events there. Ms. Landrum talked about that in your post, and you're definitely on point. A lot of places around the globe have to consider the impact of terrorism, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in this week's reading and post. What's called technological hazards, or what we have routinely called man-made or human-caused disasters. The main point I wanted y'all to understand this week was emergency managers are faced with limited resources, but a host of threats. And so what you have to do is prioritize the threats and hazards for the most likely. You're constantly learning, trying to understand what events are occurring all across the globe, but you have to be realistic and understand the threats and hazards where you're located. That FEMA document that I provided, the Threat Hazard Identification Risk Assessment guide, is a good way in which to prioritize and rank different hazards in your community. So the important thing for this week, understanding those risks and hazards, the unique characteristics of them from the chapter 2 in the textbook, and then understanding how to rank, rack and stack the threats and hazards so you can dedicate the planning, the resources to prepare for them, to mitigate them, to be able to respond and recover from those most likely threats and hazards. This week, again, we'll talk more about the man-made hazards and threats. The discussion board question is, assuming that you're the emergency manager or lead public safety official in the city of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, what are the prioritized threats and hazards from the 5 or so that were listed? My overall critique for everyone is to do the reading, put some thought into your discussion board questions. Yes, a paragraph is at least 3 sentences, but you can definitely do more than that. It should be pretty easy to go beyond that and to put in a real thoughtful, developed sentence, several sentences and a few paragraphs on the topic relating to current events, past events, your personal experience, and definitely leveraging the textbook. So definitely go further with that. I will be adding some more critiques and probably posting on the discussion board post some follow-up comments and questions for you. By tomorrow, I'll post a 10-question quiz. If you've conducted the readings, both the textbook as well as the readings in the syllabus, as well as the video, you should be good to go on the quiz. Quiz will be multiple choice, mostly, I believe, maybe one or two short answer, and due by Sunday. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. A couple of you all have sent me emails. I've tried to get back to you within 24 hours. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions or comments about the course. I will attach to this announcement an article about a recent and emerging threat within the field of emergency management, electromagnetic pulse. And so read the article, and we'll discuss that as we move forward in the semester. But it's an example of a new and emerging threat that emergency management community has to start planning for. So just want you to be aware of that. Thanks a lot. Hope you're doing well, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Have a good week.